if someone's interested in what I'm selling, again, whether it's Mobaro or water safety, again, coming from it as a helping manner, and then from there on, if I'm able to help, there are occasions where it may not be the right fit for that person, and that's fine too. So also knowing that, hey, you may present something and it's not always going to work out, and that's okay too. But you have to have perseverance and continuing on day after day, and that's what's difficult about sales, is sort of the ongoing project. You could have conversations, and that might not be relevant today, but in 2 or 3 years, that conversation may be now relevant to that person, and they will remember, that they had that conversation with you. So I think overall, eventually it pans out.
What's your guest experience strategy? You probably have a marketing strategy, recruitment strategy, and sales strategy. But what about intentionally turning first-time visitors into loyal advocates? Hey, it's Josh here, and in addition to co-hosting the podcast, I help Attractions do exactly that. From creating a culture of wow moments to empowering staff to recover from service failures, great experiences don't happen by accident. To schedule a free consultation call, visit liebmanleisure.com/attractionpros. Don't leave your guest experience to chance. You should be known for creating memorable experiences on purpose. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
All right.
Bang Zoom. Yes. I have a question for you.
All right.
I know you just recently moved.
I did.
And you've got a growing family.
I do.
That you love and you are very involved in, and you've got a business that is going very, very well.
Yeah. All true things.
All true things.
Where's the twist?
I'm curious, if you go back to 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old Josh.
Okay.
Is this exactly where you thought life would be when you were that young?
No, I thought I'd still be a ride operator.
Really?
Or I don't know. No, there's been some twists and turns along the way.
There you
Is that
go.
where
Maybe
we're going with this?
maybe some ups and downs.
Definitely some ups and downs. A lot more ups than downs, though, thankfully.
That is exactly where I was going with this, because certainly in life there are lots of twists and turns, and I think, without getting too philosophical about it, you can determine your life success will be determined on how you react to those twists and turns, whether they are environmental things that are brought to you or things that you initiate. But the reason that I bring this up is because our wonderful guest today, Marah Rodriguez, who is the Regional VP of Sales for Mobaro, talks a lot about life's twists and turns as she integrates her story into how she went from being a lifeguard to now being with Mobaro and all the twists and turns that happened in between.
Yes, such a fascinating career path that weaves in and out of the industry, and of course, I don't want to take that away from her. So so hearing just kind of how things kind of come full circle, and like I said, weave in and out was just so fascinating to hear. There were also, I would say, some core themes that were reinforced in this interview, and one of the biggest ones was about listening and empathy throughout her career journey, whether it was in sales for software or HIV prevention, the concept of helping people and really empathizing with people and seeking the best outcomes was a very common thread throughout all aspects of her life and her career.
Absolutely. And one of the other kind of threads throughout in terms of helping people is her advocacy, especially for women in leadership in the industry. And we get to hear some of the initiatives that are happening right now to bring women together, to bring leaders together, to provide a resource, to provide support, maybe even guidance in some situations, but how she has really been at the forefront of leading those initiatives and bringing people together. And it's just really fascinating to see how all of that is blossoming here in 2026.
Yes. Oh, and we also talk a little bit about Mobaro and how it helps attractions achieves outcomes like efficiencies and what the software does.
Yeah. So is it time to check the list and get our interview with Marah going?
Let's do it.
Hey, Marah, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
Great. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. So excited to have you on the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your career history?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you. I feel honored to be on the show. I know we said it was going to be 444 episodes. That's a milestone, and happy to be here. So thank you. But yeah, as far as my career, I started just like a lot of industry people when I was 16 years old at Wet n Wild, Orlando, Florida, as a lifeguard. And so that really kicked off the career in this space. Wet n Wild was really fundamental as becoming a young adult and learning about safety. That was the beginning of understanding, the importance of safety. I then actually went to help open up a wakeboard park, which was called Orlando Water Sports Complex. And the gentleman who used to work on the Ski Rixon at Wet n Wild Orlando, he was one of the owners and kind of recruited me to be employee number one there. And so had the opportunity to open that park and help get that park started. Was going through college. I went to UCF and studied communications with a minor in hospitality management. And my husband, which we weren't married at the time, but he had an opportunity to work in St. Thomas. And we thought, young as I was, I have all this hospitality experience. I had done an internship at Embassy Suites, so I'll more than likely work at a hotel there in St. Thomas, and I'll find something. And life had a different turn for me, and I didn't end up getting a job in hospitality there at St. Thomas, and actually went and veered off with the American Red Cross doing HIV prevention, which was really interesting, working with high risk population, and was a completely different path that I thought in my career, but then ended up coming back to Florida and worked with another HIV clinic, and was able to spend a few years working in there. But life is interesting. I ended up getting a sales job with doing advertising sales with AT&T, and water safety products was one of our customers. And I always like to tell younger people this story because everything that you do, it's important to do a good job, because you never know where life is going to take you. And water safety products was one of my customers. And I was telling them how I used to work at Wet n Wild Orlando, and how I used to use their products there when I worked there. And they ended up calling my old boss, Pat Finnegan, who is still in the industry. Actually, we have a great relationship, but he was essentially my one of my first bosses when I was 16 years old, and he remembered me, had great things to say, and they called me back up and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about working in the industry again?" And so that's what led me to coming back to the attractions industry, and I worked with water safety products for over 15 years, working with water parks all around the world. And again, in the same manner that happened, 15 years prior, led me to Mobaro, where I was had gone to Ames, which we just had Ames just this last month. But I had gone to Ames, and I went to go listen to Vera, who worked at Typhoon, Texas, and they were talking about how they use Mobaro at their water park, and I found that really interesting. And Jens, who was a co-founder, I know you guys have interviewed here on this podcast, and David Bromelo were there from Mobaro, and I just went up to talk to them and tell them, hey, wow, that's a pretty amazing product that you have. If you have Vera and some of the other people talking about how they use it in the water park, and it was helping them. So when they thought about expanding here to the U.S., because Mobaro is originally from Denmark, and they wanted expand more in water parks and that sort of thing. David said, "Hey, I remember meeting this girl at Ames, and so they ended up calling Mary Jane Brewer, who was the executive director at Ames at the time." And, they didn't remember my name, but they just remembered, having the conversation. And so that's how I ended up at Mobaro, which I'm really excited to be a part of this team and the work that we're doing in the attractions.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all of that career journey. It was just really fascinating to really follow that path from Orlando and to St. Thomas and then back to Florida and in and out of the industry and to where you are now. And we definitely want to talk a lot about Mobaro. But I am curious if we could highlight one point in your career, and that was your pivot out of hospitality into working with the American Red Cross in HIV prevention. I think it goes without saying that there's a lot of differences between the two, but curious if you could touch on maybe the similarities of it. What was some of the overlap or the things that really carry through?
Yeah, I think with everything in life and as you're going through the career, the most important thing is what you learn from it. And I think what I learned and the importance of that sort of work is the importance of listening and to have empathy, right? So when no matter who you're talking to or where you come from, you can always learn from another person, and it doesn't matter what level they are. I really learned that. How you listen to people and really care for what they're saying really makes a difference. And that's sort of the lesson that has really stayed with me. And understanding that if you come from a way to, that you're trying to help that person, that goes a long way. And so at the end of the day, both industries are about people and, trust and responsibility.
It's so fascinating to hear you talk about listening and empathy, because I agree with you. I think those are two underutilized skills for many leaders, specifically in the attractions industry. And I think part of it is the speed at which people have to go and the environment that people are in and that type of thing. So I'm curious, from your communications background in college and also with your real world examples and experience, what sort of guidance might you give to people who say, yeah, I want to listen more, I want to be more empathetic, but I'm not sure how to go about it? Like what kind of advice or guidance might you have for someone like that?
Yeah, well, I think first of all is actually being interested in what they have to say, right? If you're talking to somebody and you're not really paying attention, people can tell right away. You're looking around, so be present, right? When someone's talking to you, and actually uh, try to care about what they're saying, and it's pretty fascinating if you take the time. I've gotten a lot of backstories, from even other companies, how they get started, just by asking questions, being curious, and being in the moment, but actually trying to pay attention, because that's something I think I see quite a bit today, where you're talking to somebody and they may be looking around, or they're not really engaged into what you're saying, and people notice that right away. If you don't really actually care about what they're saying, then it's pretty obvious. And that goes with all the nonverbal communication that people have. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to tag onto that too and really focus on the empathy piece of it as well, because I feel like too often it's easy for empathy to become a buzzword and to just say something that, oh, we need to have it, but is it really something that is fully defined? So I guess my question is, how do you define empathy and how do you make sure that it doesn't just become kind of a buzzword that's on the wall or in core values, but really living and breathing on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, for me is, again, and I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but actually caring about the other person, and again, uh, like I mentioned, trying to help that person, and that I know even in sales, right? You have to understand where that person's coming from, what they're trying to achieve, and how to help them achieve that in conversations and getting to know people. I think that that's really important. So, it could be that they just, it may not have to do with business, but just wanting to have a conversation and being able to try to help in whatever capacity you can.
Well, and you mentioned sales, and that's another thing that I wanted to kind of dive into with you because, and I'll speak for myself as well. Like when I first got into my own business, like the word sales really scared me, right? Not only to go out and get sales and get business, but I didn't want to be like that used car salesman kind of sales, right? And I think that ties into, if you're listening and you're empathetic, you're just trying to figure out the best way to help people. So, maybe this is a conversation about what do non-sales people need to know about actually selling? Because everybody's selling themselves at some point, right? Or selling something. So what is your sort of thoughts on sort of non-sales people and how they can kind of put themselves out there?
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken a stand since I've been in sales, right? To the same thing. I don't want to be that salesperson per se, but essentially, I see with the background that I have, that sales should really be about helping someone achieve an outcome, whatever that is. So, if in at water safety, I may be helping them achieve safety through equipment, or helping them achieve more professional image through uniforms. And here at Mobaro, we're helping businesses achieve efficiency and being able to achieve something. So my my advice for those that are in sales is to really take a step back and see what that customer is trying to achieve and helping them achieve that. So if they're trying to become more efficient, well, how can we help you become more efficient? What are areas that we can help you in? And coming from more of a helpful area and to achieve that certain outcome.
So you mentioned Mobaro and talking about the outcome that you're helping clients strive to achieve, and much of that being about becoming more efficient. And so I think that's kind of a good segue, a good transition to talking a little bit about Mobaro. And curious if you could expand on that, on what is that efficiency outcome that operators are seeking that Mobaro helps with?
Yeah, so Mobaro basically, in a nutshell, is a digital platform that connects the different teams, whether that's safety, maintenance, ride operations, or any other team, into one system that can help them make those processes a lot easier, and have a platform that leaders are able to have that real-time visibility and see, what are the tasks that need to be completed on a daily basis.
So I'm curious, Mara, as you go back and think about seeing Vera speaking at Ames talking about Mobaro, what was it about that platform and product that really intrigued you and said, wow, this is something really, really cool? What was that kind of first spark?
Well, I think, especially in water parks, you see that there's a lot of processes that are being done via paper. Now, even 4 years later from where I started, it baffles me that we're still in that stage in the industry as where we are today, as in society, where we use our phone to get on an airplane and use our phone to order coffee. Yet we're still doing quite a bit on paper, and that is mind blowing, right? So when Vera talked about, how they were using Mobaro at their parks, I found it quite intriguing, and also that a customer was talking about it and really having passion about behind it. So I said, wow, if she's talking about it, that's, amazing marketing, one for Mobaro, but if a customer is talking about it, it means so much more, right? Than if I'm saying it. The people who are using it and find value in it, that really goes a long way.
So I'm curious then, in 2026, when it does feel like everything is digital, there's so many aspects of our lives that are digital. Is there a lot of pushback? Are there still a lot of operators who are very committed to pen and paper and filing cabinets and administrative offices, and resistant to move to a digital platform?
Yeah, I don't think it's more of like a commitment to paper. I think fundamentally you're changing the way people do things, right? So that fundamental change sometimes is difficult because they've always done it that way, or they find that could be a huge undertaking to change the way they do things. It's interesting to me because a lot of young people, I don't know, I have actually he's 14 now, a 14-year-old. And, he barely can use pen and paper to do much of anything. So, and we have so many young people in our industry. It's interesting to me that we're still using pen and paper, and sort of, to me, archaic, right? We eventually will need to move away from that, because what you can get out of digital is pretty vast compared to paper. The analytics, that you're able to really dive deeper and see things in real time is much more valuable. I think it's just a matter of time. I just think it's difficult for people to make that fundamental change.
Yeah, it almost seems like, they probably think, yes, this is probably better in the long run, but switching over everything that they've done and everything that they've known for years and years and years, that's the hurdle, right? And
Yes.
they can probably even see, hey, better reporting. Yay. I've got a dashboard. Great. I can look at the analytics. Wonderful. but I've still got to make this big change of what I've done for so long. That can be a hurdle.
Well, and the other thing is you think about operating times, some of the parks have very limited operating time. They're trying to operate the parks and then trying to, make a fundamental change. Sometimes that can be daunting. The reality is it's not as difficult as people perceive it to be, but it's, overcoming that obstacle in your head.
So, kind of tying this back into sales, and whether we look at this through the lens of Mobaro or through water safety products or through AT&T, tying back to what Matt said earlier of, Matt has his business, I have my business. That means we are running sales for our businesses while not trying to sound like that used car salesman and not trying to be overly salesy. And there are sometimes where I feel like I kind of have to be, whether it's about trying to schedule meetings at a conference like IAPA or following up or sending that email saying just checking in again to see if you've had a chance to review, XYZ. And even sometimes just the prospecting or the cold calling process can be really challenging because that's where I feel like I am salesiest the most. Tying this in with just your listening and empathy and the goal of trying to create the outcome. I'm wondering how you weave all of this into your personal sales flow and process.
Yeah, so you still have to have some sales processes in place in order to achieve certain goals and that sort of thing. But I try to look at things and have that process sort of be the backbone of things, but still be true to myself. If someone's interested in what I'm selling, again, whether it's Mobaro or water safety, again, coming from it as a helping manner, and then from there on, if I'm able to help, there are occasions where it may not be the right fit for that person, and that's fine too. So also knowing that, hey, you may present something and it's not always going to work out, and that's okay too. But you have to have perseverance and continuing on day after day, and that's what's difficult about sales is sort of the ongoing projects. You could have conversations, and that might not be relevant today, but in 2 or 3 years, that conversation may be now relevant to that person, and they will remember, that they had that conversation with you. So I think overall, eventually it pans out, but you have to be patient, and you can't be, pushy in the way that it has to be their time as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the toughest lessons I've learned is that patience is really the key, right? Perseverance is part of it, but also patience in terms of, not being that overly aggressive person that someone's going to say, I don't want to work with them at all. That's a tough place to be. So, wondering
your timing and their timing are too different, and somehow they have to meet eventually, hopefully, but if it doesn't in the meantime, then that's fine too. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering if we can kind of talk a little bit about how you also help, because we've been talking about helping from a sales perspective, but also helping other people in the industry, specifically women in the industry, get more involved. And you're really such an advocate for women in leadership and women in the attractions industry. So wondering if we can kind of dive into how you got involved with that and sort of some of the things that you're really trying to advocate for.
Yeah. So right now, I actually am part of the Women in Leadership Task Force, which I joined this past year for IAPA. And we also am part of a LinkedIn group that also helps women in the industry. So, as part of that, the IAPA Women in Leadership Task Force, that group, we really try to bring educational content that's related to women. The Lunch and Learn last year in 2024, they had an inaugural Lunch and Learn, which had over 250 attendees. This last year, it grew to over 300 attendees. And so they're doing a lot of initiatives to try to encourage women in the industry. We're still a minority. One of the things that they saw this past year, which was part of all of the initiatives that are happening, was having even more women apply for the IAPA board, which was in the past something that you just didn't see as much. So this past year with those initiatives, they had from 7 applications the year before to 21, which is quite a jump and pretty cool. We celebrated Luciana from Argentina beyond the chair on the APA Global Board of Directors. So quite a few initiatives going in there. And then from the female group that we started, that was pretty cool because so I was on a bus going to IAPA and was talking to one of the customers, Jessica Alfaro. I'm not sure if you know her, but from Santa Cruz Boardwalk. Yep. And we just started talking and just as everything goes, we had a great conversation. And we said, we really should start a LinkedIn group. And we started chatting and having meetings. And we found that it was very helpful just to have an open conversation. That group is called the Female Leaders of Amusement Parks and Attractions. And then we said, I know Una from Whitewater had this small group of women trying to meet up right around IAPA and some of the events. So I went up to Una and I said, hey, how about we combine, what I'm trying to do with the LinkedIn group and what you're doing with the networking at the evenings on Monday evening at IAPA. And so she agreed, and we said, okay, who else can we bring in? And she thought, Emily, that used to work for IAPA, would be great. Emily Popovich, I'm sure you know her, and then Susan Story. And so we all came together and kind of combined our networking scope, and it was amazing. So that first year, obviously Una had been doing it for several years, but the collective effort when all 4 of us came together brought over 200 women on, which was overwhelmingly a success. The previous years was 25, maybe 30 people to 200 in just one year. That was pretty amazing. We were all very excited. And this last year, we had over 300 women join us, which has become very meaningful and something that we cherish because we've had so many people come up to us and say, we really enjoy just having a night where we can come together and celebrate our successes and try to support each other, basically. And so we tried to keep engaged on LinkedIn and support what, all of us are doing in the industry and just being a collective, unified front.
That's amazing, and it's so incredible just to follow that and just to watch that and just see that continue to grow and just that level of influence. Is there any particular advice that you have for women in the industry who are aspiring leaders or very focused on their professional and career development?
Yeah, I think try to get involved. If there was something that I wish I would have done earlier in my career, is to try to get involved as much as you can, that your voice matters and that people do want to hear what different perspectives from different people at all levels. So if there's any advice that I would give to women today is, and to any young leader, right, is believe in yourself, try to be genuine, talk to as many people as you can, and remember that everyone is human. So, don't be afraid to talk to different people at different levels. Everyone is still a human and still, has been in your shoes. So I think what's beautiful about this industry is, everyone is pretty approachable, I think.
I would agree. And I think it's more the fear of the unknown. Like, I don't know that person, so it's hard to, kind of walk up to them and things of that nature. But I love that advice of just getting involved. And I would imagine that it's your involvement, it's your advocacy, it's your passion for the industry that led to you being the recipient of the Top 50 Blue Loop Award, the Influencer Award this year. So I want to first of all congratulate you on that, which is awesome. So great to know that you've been recognized for that. But I'm curious, what was it like when you learned about that, and what does that recognition mean to you?
Well, first of all, I was completely surprised, so did not expect that. It's funny because I had planned to go to the reception, but that was the only day of the week, being a very busy week at IAPA, that our team could get together as a team dinner. So I was actually at the dinner when I started getting text. Melissa Lockwood from Baha Mar texted me, and she's like, "Did you know that you're on the screen?" She was at the reception, and so I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I had no idea, and of course, I'm completely floored and honored that someone took the time to submit my name, and being recognized for Blue Loop is something that I still quite don't believe, but incredibly grateful.
I will echo Matt's congratulations on that and say that it's very well deserved. And kind of tying in this kind of ties in a lot of things we've been talking about is that you've been very involved in many trade organizations. We've talked about IAPA, we've talked about AIMS, you're involved with NARSO, with WWA, and curious if you can talk about really what inspires you to want to be involved and how that's truly impacted your career.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to feeling, that I'd like to help others in whatever way and whatever impact I can do. I think that that's mainly the reason why I try to stay involved, and be able to just, the little knowledge that I may have, that I could share that, right? So I think that that's important.
So, Marah, as we're kind of winding down our time here, I want to go back to your first job as a lifeguard in the industry. And I'm curious, with all of the experiences that you've had since then, are there still things that you learned as a lifeguard that are now influencing what you do today?
Yeah, I think, and I was just talking to my son about this the other day, because we're talking about, he's coming to the age where he might need to look at his first job. I really think that being a lifeguard as my first job was a great experience. I think that it does focus on training, safety, always safety being first, and that kind of, they say once a lifeguard, always a lifeguard, and I think that is so true. And I also think that even other industries can learn a lot from having that safety culture, because that's really what the lifeguard training really does, is, says how important safety is. They do services every month that you have to do, and that's part of that. And I wonder still to this day if we took some of the takeaways from that industry into other industries, where we could be if we had that dedication to safety as part of that training.
Yeah, you make a good point. I have a client who's not in the water park space who is looking at lifeguard training for some of their team members and treating some of their team members like as if they are lifeguards and kind of getting into that mindset. Can you expand on what you said of once a lifeguard, always a lifeguard?
Yeah, so those skills that you learn as a lifeguard, CPR, and just again that for I worked at Wet n Wild for I think about 5 years. That day to day safety first, always looking at potential areas where people may be in distress or even walking around, you're always looking for safety and helping the park. So I think for me, I've used some of the skills even in my personal life, where I've had to use those skills that I've learned during emergency situations. And as I have a child as well, I go into a birthday party and I'm always looking, at the pool and making sure, all the kids are safe. But yeah, once a lifeguard, always a lifeguard. You have that safety ingrained basically in everything that you do.
I think that's so fascinating when you talk about going to the birthday party and you're watching the pool now so many years later because of that initial training that you had. And I totally agree. And I'm glad that Josh brought it up too, thinking about how we can take that mindset of that the constant in services and focusing on safety and things like that, and whatever the area of study is for that group. Maybe it's guest services, but now we're talking about resolving guest complaints, or we're talking about plussing an experience for someone, but we're using that concept of recurring training all the time to kind of keep those ideas fresh, but also spur new ideas. I think that's really critical.
Yeah, even if you think about, I think that can be really applied to any industry, right? It's just taking the time and investing in the training, and you can really make an impact. Even if you're at trampoline park and you have, the attendance, if you take time into training and having that safety mindset and continually, right? Safety shouldn't be something that you do it, as they're onboarding and then, okay, they've done the class and now, you check the box and they're certified and now you don't do it. I subscribe to the idea, just as they do in water parks for lifeguards, that it is an ongoing, and you have to be able to train and train and train so that in the time that they need to use that skill, it is just second nature to them, so that they're able to one, notice when there is a problem and be able to respond to it accordingly. If you do it as just like a forget it and they may not be able to rise to the occasion in the time of an emergency.
Yeah. It is not a check the box, set it, forget it type of training.
Yeah,
So
it's ongoing.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that, and it clearly something that you are passionate about. So I appreciate you sharing not only that, but all of what you have shared in the interview today. We really appreciate your time. We are starting to wind down here, but if people want to learn more about Mobaro, or if they want to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Well, LinkedIn is always a good start. On our website, mobaro.com. And my email is mr@mobaro.com.
Excellent. We will make sure that all gets in the show notes so that people can refer to that very quickly. So, Marah, thank you again for your time today. This was just absolutely amazing. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.